everyone. Welcome to our next webinar. Again, I am Dr. Deanna Camillo. I am one of the co-directors for the Center for Equity in Post-Secondary Attainment here at San Diego State. Today we have our presentation. It's a long title, From a Bag Lunch to a Buffet, a case study of a low-income African-American academy's vision of promoting college and career readiness in the United States. So today our hosts will be Eric Hines and Dr. Eddie Fletcher. So with that, I will pass it over to Dr. Hines.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Camillo, and thank you, Dr. Laura Owen, for hosting this webinar series on our special theme issue that we got published through the Journal of College Access, entitled Equity-Based Career Development and Post-Secondary Readiness. So Dr. Fletcher, his article is one of 8 scholarly and prolific articles that we have for this, this special issue. And before we get started with Dr. Fletcher, I also want to plug that we have a companion resource, the Equity-Based Career Development and Post-Secondary Transitions, an American Imperative. This textbook serves as a call to work with all populations. So we talk about first-gen, immigrant groups, Latinx, African-American. We also talk about school counseling, career technical education. So I will put this in the chat box where you can purchase it. You can purchase it at all major book retailers and outlets, even online, Amazon. I think this is a great fit to not only discuss equity-based post-secondary readiness, but it also is tailored to the special theme issue. So with that being said, I'm going to let Dr. Fletcher go ahead and take the lead. Thank you, Dr. Fletcher, for doing this webinar today. And we look forward to a substantive, healthy, and also a enriching conversation around career academies and college and career readiness.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, and thank you all for inviting me to present. And thank you all for coming to this presentation. So as I said, I'm an Education and Human Ecology Distinguished Professor at Ohio State University, and I teach in the Workforce Development and Education program. I wanted to start with my research agenda, which is to examine the role and impact of career and technical education programs on students' experiences. So I look at both career and technical education and workforce education holistically, but particularly I'm interested in students' experiences in high school STEM career academies. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about the career academy model on a future slide. But I look at students' experiences in these STEM academies, and these are particularly engineering and IT academies in high school. I look at their engagement. I look at their readiness for college and careers, and I look at how the academy helps the students to transition from high school to post-secondary education and into the workforce. And I particularly have an interest in students who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds and students who are ethnically and racially diverse. The most recent couple of grants that I've received focuses mainly on Black male students in particular. So I wanted to provide just an overall context of the full NSF project, because this is just one study and some of our findings, but we had lots of data collection, a lot of different schools, and a lot of different themes and quantitative data that we collected, because it's a mixed method study. So it was a 3-year project. The purpose was to examine the impact of students participating in NAF, which is formerly known as the National Academy Foundation, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth about NAF a little bit later, IT or Information Technology Academies, and how that impacts their readiness for college and careers. So for this particular project, we had 3 schools that were geographically dispersed across the country. One of the schools was in the West. It was primarily Latinx students. One of our schools was in the Midwest, and it was primarily Black. And then one was in the Southeast, which was about half white and half Latinx and Black. So throughout the 3 years, the first year we really focused on looking at the stakeholders' perspectives, because we wanted to find out a little bit about the context in which these schools operate. So we looked at issues of like, why did they choose IT, for instance? Why did they choose to create an IT career academy within their school? How did the academy develop over time? How is it implemented on a daily basis? And then what are the supports for students, both external to the school and internal supports? And then in year 2, we really focused on the student. We wanted to find out about their experiences. We also wanted to find out how the students are engaged in the academy and compare it to non-academy students. We did comparisons between academy and non-academy students in college and career readiness as well. And then in year 3, we compared their student achievement. So that's really the gist of the overall project. But the purpose of this particular research study was to examine the ways in which stakeholders, which we define broadly, including administrators, teachers, school counselors, parents, community members, at an economically disadvantaged, predominantly African-American STEAM academy, how did they implement initiatives that supported students in their efforts to make them college and career ready? So that was the purpose of this particular study. So if you look in the literature, or if you are familiar with college and career readiness, it's really the most critical objectives for high schools currently. But when you look in the literature, you can see the different varying definitions, which creates a lot of confusion. So these are just several definitions that I found in the literature. One is the need for schools to increase rigor, to have higher standards for high school students, and to increase the number of courses that students graduate from high school with, in terms of core academic programs like math, science, and English, for instance. Another definition is the need for preparing students for college without subsequent remediation needs. Oftentimes, when we think about college, most people are thinking about 4-year baccalaureate degrees. And then also, there's a lot of literature that talks about how do we prepare students for a college-going mindset, or how do we create a school that has a college-going culture within the school. So this could be helping them to transition from high school to post-secondary education to get them in the school, whether it's providing them with ACT, SAT exams, or providing them with financial aid information, scholarship information, or taking them on college tours, things like that. So in this paper, we really kind of wrestle with how can schools help students become college and career ready. When I think of college and career readiness, I really think of 3 indicators. The first one is participation in accelerated coursework, which could include advanced placement, dual enrollment courses, international baccalaureate, honors courses, really preparing students for the rigor of college in terms of the college curriculum and courses. A second factor would be, oops, sorry, let me go back. Second factor would be this college-going mindset, or a college-going culture in schools, which I said before, preparing students to matriculate into college, whether that's due financial aid, advising them about ACT, SAT, or taking college tours. But what's often left out of the college and career readiness piece is this focus on career development. How do we prepare students for the career readiness piece?
I wanted a what?
I think somebody's mic is not muted. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So I think that a lot of times when people are talking about college and career readiness, they kind of equate being college ready with being career ready. So if students somehow, if we make them college ready, somehow they're also going to be career ready. And I think those 2 pieces are different. So in this particular study, we used a case study approach. And again, we're looking at the STEAM Academy, which was the case, operating within unique contexts. So the student population was mainly African-American Black students who came from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. The leadership team, which included the principal and several assistant principals, were all Black females, Black women, I should say. And then the faculty, or also the superintendent was a Black male, and then the faculty were predominantly white. And this created some issues in terms of cultural mismatch, as well as politics. So some of the white faculty have different political views, and they would express it with their students, and that created some conflict in the school. So we did visit the school for 5 days. We did a tour of the school. We did 6 classroom observations, 5 offsite visits where we would go to their business and industry partners sites, and we'd actually take tours of them, get those business industry partners interviewed. And then we interviewed 33 school stakeholders, which included district administrators, school board members, the academy team, the STEAM Academy teachers, as well as the core academic teachers, school counselors, staff, parents, post-secondary partners, business and industry partners, and a community partner. So we really wanted to get a good landscape of what's going on and how do these individuals support the students in their mission to be college and career ready. We also interviewed students. I think we interviewed about 30 students and about 20 alumni as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the school. When I reference names of the school, reference names of the participants, I'm using pseudonyms. So we called this Johnson Academy, and Johnson Academy is located in the Midwest. It's a STEAM themed academy, so they focus on STEM, particularly engineering and IT, but they really have arts integrated very well in this particular school. They have animation courses for students and digital design. They have companies that come in to help the students animate their work on computers, and so it's fairly robust arts integration. When we talked to the art teacher in an interview, she talked about her role in the school and how she worked with the principal and asked the principal if it was okay if she showcased the artwork of the students. So this is an example of one of the artwork that the students created. When we toured the school, we could see artwork all across the walls, on the ceiling. You could really see the investment in the student investment in the school. And when the art teacher talked to the principal, she asked if she could showcase the work of the students. And the principal replied that, go ahead and use the school as your canvas. And that's what she did. This particular academy is a model academy. So it's a NAF academy, and NAF, they do evaluate their academies on the level of implementation of their standards and practices. So this is kind of a mid-tier, a model academy. A certified academy is kind of the lower level of implementation. And then distinguished academies are high fidelity academies to their standards. And I'll talk a little bit about their standards later. This was a comprehensive school, but it's a very small school with about 700 students. And there's only one high school in this particular district. 98% of their students are Black, 48% female, and every student was eligible for free and or reduced lunch in the school. And because of that, the superintendent applied for a state grant. And because of that state grant money, they were able to provide wraparound services for their students. So they have a clinic within the school with a full-time pediatrician. They provide free health benefits for students. So free dental, free vision. They provide mental health services for students. They have school psychologists that are in the clinic as well, and social workers. They provide free breakfast, lunch, and dinner 6 days a week for the students. They also provide clothing and many other resources for students, both for the students, their families, and the overall community. Their model was that we take care of all the basic needs of the students so that they can do what they need to do in the classroom, which is engage academically. And they really attributed those wraparound services to their high graduation rate of 95%. So, I referenced NAF and their standards of practice. So NAF, again, formerly known as the National Academy Foundation, they're a network of high school career academies across the country. There's estimated to be over 8,000 academies across the country that are career academies. But I oftentimes think that many of those academies are just academies on paper. They're not necessarily implementing the practices of the academy model. But NAF, they actually go, like I said, evaluate their academies. They really monitor and help support the technical and provide technical assistance for their academies. So they have about 680 academies across the country. And they focus on 5 different themes: engineering, IT, health sciences, hospitality and tourism, and finance. So just more about the standards of practice. The first standard of practice is academy development and structure, providing a cohort model. So they cohort their students. And these academies are in different schooling configurations. So some might be in a career center, others might be in a comprehensive school or a magnet school, or really just any type of configuration, charter schools as well. But even in the comprehensive schools, they break down those large student bodies into small learning communities with students that have shared interests. So oftentimes when we talk to the students, they say that they feel like they're part of a family and they feel part of a community. The academy, NAF also really they really try to promote open enrollment. So they want to make sure that every student is eligible to participate in the academy if they want to. Some of these magnet schools are kind of small and they're oversubscribed. So they sometimes will rely on a lottery system to get students into the academy. They also have a team of teachers, both core academic teachers and career themed teachers that work together in interdisciplinary lessons. They provide rigorous industry validated career themed curricula for their academies, but the schools have the option of either using their curricula or using their own curricula. They do require advisory boards of all their academies, and these are comprised of business and industry, post-secondary, and community partners. They provide lots of resources and supports for students, including funding for equipment, software, and they also provide financial aid or scholarships for students. They provide help in terms of the curriculum for the teachers to make sure that they're up to date and in terms of industry standards. And they provide a lot of work-based learning opportunities for students. So they'll provide the internships and coordinate those, and job shadowing and guest speaking, et cetera, et cetera. But the last standard of practice is work-based learning. So they do ensure that they have a sequence of work-based learning activities for students that promote career awareness, exploration, and preparation. So for example, in their freshman year, students may participate in doing career assessment inventories to see, their personalities and how they align with careers that they might be interested in. They do resume writing, for instance, maybe in 9th grade. And 10th grade, they might do job shadowing, or they might have guest speakers come in to talk about different industries and their positions and what they do on a day-to-day basis. Junior year, in the summer, oftentimes they have paid internships for students within the career interests that they have. And then in senior year, they typically have some type of capstone project where students build a portfolio of the work that they've done and showcase it to business and industry partners and doing mock interviews and things like that. So again, these are work-based learning activities that are developmentally appropriate and that build on each other as they go through high school. So in terms of our findings for this particular study, the first theme that we named Leadership Visions Addressing Equity Issues. And this really had to do with the last two superintendents, the prior superintendent and her vision, and then the current superintendent and his vision. So the prior superintendent really brought the school up to standards. So she was able to provide or make sure that they were accredited, because they were not accredited before her. She also implemented the wraparound services for students. And then she created this college prep academy for students. Then when the new superintendent came in, he kept all of those things going, but then he also added the career academies. And when we talked to the stakeholders, we could tell, and both the administrators, teachers, school counselors, as well as the students, they shared with us that in the prior superintendent, with that college prep academy, many of the students who weren't part of that college prep academy really kind of had some animosity towards those students that were college prep students. They told us how in 8th grade, the students would apply to be in the college prep academy, and it was based off of grades, it was based off of behavior as well. And once they were in, they were in. But if they wanted to, say, for instance, in 10th grade, they decided to be in the college prep academy, they couldn't enter the college prep academy. So one student in particular, he was talking about how the college prep academy had all these opportunities and resources that the traditional students did not have. So he talked about how he thought that the college prep students were treated as princes and princesses, where he would say that they would oftentimes on the intercom say, college prep students come to the cafeteria for your field experience. And they would always, be dressed up and have, nice attire, and they would always report to the cafeteria. And he said, well, he started to think, well, I would like to participate in those field trips as well. Just because I didn't sign up in 8th grade, now all of a sudden I don't get to participate and have access to those resources. So there was a lot of tension between the traditional students and the college prep students. So the superintendent, which I'll call Dr. Henderson, he noted this. He says here, the philosophy that Dr. Thompson, the prior superintendent, had was to establish a college prep academy, which she did start. Our philosophy was unified in the college prep academy, but there was nothing for everyone else. Our philosophies were totally aligned as to how that college preparation should go, and also totally aligned as it relates to the wraparound services needed to focus on learning and doing more. 100% alignment there. However, there was this void for everyone that was not in the college prep academy. And Miss Williams, the English teacher, also spoke to that. She says, yes, before we had an emphasis on the college prep program. Something that I really love about Dr. Henderson is I really kind of had this weird taste in my mouth that there was these haves and have-nots. I was so excited when Dr. Henderson said, we want to start an academy for all. And I thought, wow, that's what our kids need, especially when I mentioned students who are labeled, maybe I've never been good at math, I've never been good at reading. And so showing them, well, that's okay. We've got this academy and all these avenues that you can pursue so that you can be successful in the future. And our second theme also spoke to that as well. It was this from a bag lunch to a buffet concept that one of the business teachers phrased, actually, Mr. Jones. He said, if you want to use an analogy, you could say we went from a bag lunch to a buffet. With a bag lunch, it was take it or leave it, one size fits all, which it didn't serve the general population of our students. A lot of them just didn't benefit from it or weren't interested in it. Now with our buffet style approach to educating our young people, there's something for everybody. If you're not that kid that is a strong academic, but maybe there's some technical things you can do. If you're one of those kids who are more hands-on, then we've got the construction program. There's a little bit of something for everybody. I think they feel more included now and more valued because of that. The third theme was career-focused programs leading to engagement. So Ms. Lee, as school counselor, said, we still carry that piece, college prep, I think that Dr. Henderson added onto it more. I remember with Dr. Thompson, it really was a struggle that first year with her. Every student is not going to college, and we have to be realistic. The first thing, you're wasting money for them and you're setting them up for failure. Every student, they got to have some type of training when they leave high school, but not every student wants to go to a four-year college. Her first year, every student had to take ACT. Every student is not, I mean, they're going to skip it. They're just not going to come on that Saturday. So some students, they'll go and just put anything down. We have to find what is the best fit for them. And then the last theme was this focus on creating partnerships and raising capital. So Dr. Henderson discussed how his mindset and vision was to work with partners, both university partners and corporate partners, to raise money, to raise opportunities and resources for the school. He said that that's something that urban school administrators and particularly district administrators and superintendents, as well as rural school superintendents, should be focused on, given their limited resources. So he said, I had touches with corporate leaders, which then made it a little bit easier to just utilize that leverage to get partnerships for kids and internships and programs. As a personal goal of mine for the past, since being superintendent since 2010, I've always had a personal goal to raise $1 million worth of private money every year. It's not a board directive. It's not been a requirement in any of my evaluations or anywhere. If you're an urban poor district or a rural poor district, it should be a no-brainer. Raise private money so that you could do private things. So just in conclusion, we really thought that the efforts that the school stakeholders at Johnson Academy did to prepare their students to be college and career ready really helped address some of the equity issues that they had in the school and access to quality and customized curriculum for students. And we also found, from the perspective of students, that they felt more included and they felt like a sense of belonging and more engaged from the shift from a lunch bag to a lunch buffet with the inclusion of career academies in addition to the college prep academy. We also thought that the extended network of support through those partnerships really created a lot of leverage and help them carry out the mission of preparing students to be college and career ready. Those school, community, business partnerships really help not only with the students academically, but also with the wraparound services as well. But there was one lingering issue that we had with the interviews and the school stakeholders and what they were saying, because they kind of viewed college and career readiness as an either or thing. Like, if you're interested in going to college, you need to be in the college prep academy, particularly if you're wanting to go to a four-year university. But if you're interested in going to the workforce right after high school, then you need to go to the career academies. And that's really not what the career academies are designed for. The career academies are designed for preparing students to be college and career ready, whether they want to go into the workforce or they want to go and pursue post-secondary education. So for instance, if I'm in an IT academy, the expectation is that I graduate from the academy and then I either go into the workforce or pursue IT, for instance, as my major. So that's something I think we need to bring to their attention, and they need to provide some professional development with their school stakeholders related to this issue of college and career readiness and what the mission of career academies really are. So that concludes my presentation, and I can go ahead and take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher, for this timely topic and research agenda. So yes, I'll open it up to, we can open it up to anyone who may have questions. Please feel free to put questions in the chat. And if we don't have questions, I know I have a few. I think we can have a conversation around this topic. And I also think getting to know more about career academies as well as career technical education. And give it about a few seconds. All right. Well, I'll start us off, Dr. Fletcher. So one of the, as I was hearing you talk about the presentation as well as reading the paper, one of the things that stood out for me is that the leadership of the school district really mattered. I mean, in terms of the vision and the mission, that seems to have this turnaround for you to, or for the school to have this buffet in order for students to feel more included into this post-secondary readiness. I would call it intentionality, to ensure that students felt like they were prepared. And her mission was for students to have some type of college preparation before they leave school. Can you talk more about maybe in the interviews, kind of the thoughts around while focusing on college prep for African American students, particularly at this career academy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because most of the literature talks about the need for preparing particularly Black students to be college ready and for college preparation. And that, and in that sense, it did that. I think it really aligned with that mission. But from what we were hearing from the stakeholders and the students themselves, only about 30% of the students actually participated in the College Prep Academy. So it ended up being almost like a tracking mechanism, creating this, as they said, kind of this haves and have-nots. So those 70% of the students who didn't participate in the college prep really didn't get involved in all these different field trips, and they had like research lab experiences where students would go to the university and work with faculty and doctoral students on experiments, at the university, and just all these types of this wealth of resources. So it ended up being kind of like a tracking mechanism where students were in a college prep, and students who wanted to get in a college prep could not get in the college prep, academy. So my perspective is, and similar to the stakeholders' perspective, is we need something for all students, and that's kind of what they were talking about in most of their interviews. That most of the discussions is that now there's a academy for everyone. If you want to go in construction trades, if you want to go into let's say health sciences, or if you want to go into IT or engineering or what have you, there's something for you. So they really, I think were satisfied more so with Dr. Henderson's approach of having both the College Prep Academy, but also having the career academies as well. And that's the thing. So career academies are really college prep as well, or they're designed to be. They're not, I wouldn't say that every school has that perspective, and obviously the school doesn't either. So there are some career academies out there that are really just preparing students to enter the workforce and nothing else. But the model is designed for both. So students in career academies, they do take accelerated coursework, AP, dual enrollment. They do get industry certifications. They have internships. They, and actually, in some schools, we're finding that, like for instance, one of my schools, we have, I think it's 80% Black student population, and they have an Academy of Engineering within it. And hardly any of the Black students participate in the Academy of Engineering. It's mostly white, Asian, and Indian students who participate. And then we found out that the math was the issue, because they wanted those students to have like really, take calculus and take all these higher level math courses. And if they weren't, doing well in those math courses, the school counselors would say, the Academy of Engineering, you're not going to do well in it. So, choose something else. So we're seeing kind of the flip side of that in some schools, that these academies are really the only people that are able to access them sometimes are the white students, the Asian students, and the Indian students versus Black students.
So it's interesting that you talk about the inequities in the career academies,
right?
In which they were designed to help the intended population with Black students in the home school, but they're functioning like some of these accelerated courses or I won't say any accelerated programs that you would see in traditional schools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you touched on something that I would love for you to talk more about. You said that there was a difference between being college ready and then being career ready. And I think a lot of people make both of those synonymous.
Yep.
And when you said that in your research and your study, can you tell us the difference of how do we know that a student is college ready, and then how do we know that a student will be career ready? And you can even infuse this with some of the I know you've been doing extensive studies on career academies and career technical education.
Yeah, and Stone and Lewis, they wrote a book in 2012 talking about the definition of college and career readiness, and they defined it as academic skills. So we know that students need the basic skills in math, science, English to do well in college, as well as in the workforce and their careers. They also talk about this occupational expression of core academic content or these basic skills, which is really where the career academies come in. It's like, okay, we can be learning math, for instance, in an engineering context, which actually there's been studies that look at the integration of math and career and technical education, and how when students are able to apply what they're learning, they're able to do better in those math courses. So that's what he's talking about, that occupational expression. It's just not, we don't know, it's not just learning math for math's sake, but learning math to apply it to something that they're interested in, like engineering, for instance. He talks about also employability skills. So what are those kind of like 21st century skills that students need to be college and career ready, which might be personal responsibility, work ethic, problem solving, critical thinking, working in teams, those types of skills that are needed, which is oftentimes cultivated in internships and some of these work-based learning opportunities for students. And then he talks about needing technical skills. So if I want to be an engineer, for instance, what kind of occupational specific skills do I need to do well in that particular area? And oftentimes students will earn industry certifications to demonstrate that they are doing well. They know this, or they have mastered these technical skills within their career of interest. So I think those are the skills that are needed, and it can be cultivated through schools.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'll pull back. I didn't mention this in the beginning, but my fabulous, scholarly co-editors, Dr. Renee Mays and Dr. Paul Harris, are on the line with us, who played a tremendous role in making sure that this special issue got the publication. I want to give them a special shout out, and I believe that they have a few questions as well. But so my last question is, you mentioned wraparound services, and normally when we talk about wraparound services, we're thinking about students that are high needs. We're focused on, okay, we need to get them everything they need to not only just survive, but to also do well in their academics. However, you mentioned wraparound services to be connected to post-secondary readiness. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I don't think we really think about wraparound services as helping students think about opportunities beyond graduation.
Right. And the model of this particular school was that, they have very high need students who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So they were saying how students would come, before they had these wraparound services, they wouldn't come to class because they didn't have clothes or they didn't have food. And, so they said that they wanted to to make sure that we cover all the basic needs of these students, so that when they go in the classroom, they can take care of learning. If they're hungry, or if they don't have clothes, or what have you, they're not gonna learn. And they attributed that those wraparound services to the high graduation rates of their particular school. So they really focus on those wraparound services, but also they focus on, like I said, raising capital and creating partnerships with their local universities and business and industry partners, so they can provide these resources in the form of internships and job shadowing opportunities for students. They took them to Ivy League schools and HBCUs, and all that funding and stuff was provided, uh, by these partners that they had. So, that's another thing that we raised in the paper, is that this particular superintendent was incredibly dynamic. If you know him, he's incredibly charismatic, and I mean, he just meets, creates friends everywhere. So if and when he retires or moves on, we talked about how do we cultivate that? Will it just leave when he leaves? And we talked about the need for the superintendent and the school administrators to have a coalition or a team of people who can go out and create these partnerships. There are roles where they will have someone who does that for them, and that's what their full-time job is in some of these schools. So we kind of talk about that issue as well, like the sustainability part of it.
No, that's good stuff. Nyasha Boyd has a question. Please forgive me if I mispronounce your name.
It is Nyasha, and that's okay. I appreciate being a part of the conversation. My question for Mr. Fletcher, he mentioned something that resonated with me around this concept of gatekeepers. And we here in Michigan, and I won't hold the color of your shirt against you, but we...
I was just in Michigan last weekend, and I made sure I wore my shirt.
It's all good.
Went to Ann Arbor.
Yeah, but we've been just challenged sometimes about that concept of students being told no before they try, and students maybe having their history or their track record be held so close to their outcomes and expectations that it makes it hard for them to ever live outside of the shadow of their rap sheet, if you will, whether they've been excellent students or not. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to that, because we do have a wonderful CTE program in our district. We have over 13 different cluster area offerings, and we're unique in our county, but yet we still have students who will apply to go to engineering school and have never stepped foot in a CTE classroom. Or we've had students who maybe have had a track record of maybe not passing an algebra class and automatically getting ruled out for all these other opportunities just because of one maybe poor experience in a classroom or a poor interaction with a teacher. So I'm wondering if we could speak to how we help our systems become less gatekeepers and more gate openers, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Thank you. And the philosophy of this particular school was no excuses. They didn't see issues or challenges. They just saw, how do we fix this issue or challenge? And what I found in some of the research that we've done, particularly, like I was saying, with the Academy of Engineering, and one of the schools that I collect the data from, we did see where the school counselor and others were really a gatekeeper for particularly Black students to enter into the Academy of Engineering, because they didn't feel like they had the prerequisite math skills to do well in that academy, and they felt like they were setting students up for failure. But some of the things that we documented and recommended for that academy was, one, going to middle school and recruiting students and sharing with them, like, hey, if you're interested in the Academy of Engineering, these are the prerequisites that you need to have. So you should be thinking about that in middle school, sharing that with their parents as well, because oftentimes the parents are unfamiliar with these STEM programs and engineering. So they don't have any understanding or interest in those areas. Oftentimes in middle school, you can have like robotics as a fun kind of club for students to see if they're interested, to see if they that's something that resonates with them. So really, I think the pipeline should start in the middle school to prepare them. We also see that students, there's other career pathways that are related to engineering that instead of just engineering. So there's a lot of applied pathways for engineering, like advanced manufacturing and the programs like that some students don't know about. So that was one of our recommendations for that Academy of Engineering is, if students really don't do well in math and, they don't do well in the Academy of Engineering, is there an more applied math pathway that they might want to consider? So that was one recommendation that we had. And then another recommendation we had was that particular school was 80%, the student population was 80% Black, and most of the teachers were Black, but we found out that the AP teachers and the engineering teachers were almost all white. And when we talked to the teachers, they were telling us how, they don't really connect with the students. Like they don't know what their students are interested in. And if they knew that, maybe they could appeal to those students. So we talked about, this culturally relevant math pedagogy. Like how do we connect the math to the students' interests? So maybe they'll be more engaged. And they weren't doing that at that school. They just really, were following this strict math curriculum. They followed the Lead the Way curriculum to the T. And they were bragging about like how, this was such a great curriculum. And it's, our students, when they graduate from high school, they go and major in engineering and become these great engineers, and we follow them and things like that. May not appealing to the Black student population. So how do we create the curriculum to make it more culturally relevant? And there's a lot of literature that's coming out about culturally relevant or culturally responsive math pedagogy. So we recommended, those things to really try to provide more access and make it more appealing to Black students.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. We've had an uptick in our EMR and our EMT programs because there's something about being able to do the hands-on activities, to be able to ride in the ambulances. We've had more students pipeline into being nurses and doctors going that route through our CTE programs, and also saving money as well. So I like the point that you're mentioning about the applied areas where maybe we don't have to be so talented in our academics in certain areas. We are talented, but maybe not automatically eliminating students based on grades and past performance. So thank you for what you shared.
And the 2-year route, I think, is important as well. I think there's a stigma that everyone needs to go to 4-year university and get a baccalaureate degree. And I think these stigmatized viewpoints of stakeholders really are limiting, I think, to the potential of our students.
Yeah, for sure. And then one last thing, and I know there's some other people who would love to speak. We use a program in our district that's used to be Career Cruising, but it's called Zello. And we're really trying to help young people identify their learning styles and some of their skills and interests, because what we're also finding is that in predominantly middle-class experiences, there's still this desire for the diploma over the skills. And so a lot of students are going AP and IB who don't test well, or who do not particularly write well, or cannot do the rigor of a 2-year program. However, that's still what's pushed. And so we're really just trying to change the narrative about the journey or the path to your experience. So I really appreciate what you shared today.
Thank you. And some of these academies really have great partnerships with their 2-year colleges as well, and they provide dual enrollment opportunities. So like one of our academies in our study, I think they had 38 students who graduated last year with the 2 years Associate of Arts in IT. So they're already 2 years ahead and going right into the university setting. So the advisory boards, the partnerships with the community and the business and industry, and those university partners, I think, are really critical to provide opportunities for the students.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Mays.
Dr. Fletch, it's always good to see you, and thank
Likewise.
you for I'll say gracing us with their presence, but it's always an honor to hear more about your work and just to hear from you. I might I'll stop geeking out. I really appreciate you talking about and using the metaphor that your colleagues use, right, of moving from a brown bag lunch to a buffet, because I think that we often approach CCR as really just college, and we miss out on a whole bunch of other opportunities, and almost, I think, in some ways create a hierarchy, right, of either you go to college or you just suck, and you're, and that kind of binary thinking is not helpful for students in any way, shape, or form. So to my question, right, there's a question embedded in this. So as a school counselor educator, I think about we want to do this, right? We want to do this in, I'll say, K through 12 schools, especially in high school, as it's the kind of the launch part for students. What do you think might be foundational if a school isn't doing this at all? What might be some things that I can advocate for to help get something like this off the ground? And even my own, how can I help myself have the proper knowledge and skills to be able to create or collaborate on implementing something like this?
Yeah, I really, and I don't mean to be an advocate for NAF, but the National Academy Foundation, they're now called NAF, this is their wheelhouse. This is exactly what they do. They help schools build these career pathway programs and career academies for their students. So they have a year of planning where they do intense planning, because it's difficult, because they have to do scheduling, they have to cohort the students, and that's really a logistical nightmare. But they help provide those technical supports and services for those schools. They provide industry validated curricula for the schools if they want to use their own curricula. They provide insight into the work-based learning, and they have corporate partners like Marriott and Verizon and Lenovo and all these companies that have signed on to help the NAF academies provide internships. And even in the pandemic, they provided virtual internships. So they had I forget how many, 8 school districts where during the pandemic, these major companies provided virtual internships for their students, so they can get those internships through the pandemic. And they just a wealth of resources. They have a portfolio manager that works. So the portfolio managers are kind of like regional managers. So they have a region of schools that they work with intensely with whatever needs that they have. So I would definitely go to naf.org and check that out. And there's a very simple application process where you can just talk to one of the NAF representatives, and they'll tell you all about it. But they're really designed to help the schools implement these academies and to start them up. And sometimes the schools, after they've done that, they're like, okay, we don't need you anymore. We will continue what you've taught us, and they're okay with that as well. They realize that. So yeah, I think NAF is a really good way to build these career pathways and career academies in their schools.
It's nice to know we don't have to go it alone, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I can easily know something is the right thing to do, but not know how to do it. And having a squad that can walk alongside you and say, oh, we've kind of been down here before. We can figure out what it means in your school in particular, but we have some ideas.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of schools that are out there doing it very well. Miami-Dade is one example. Their entire school district, all the high schools have career academies, NAF academies in them. And many of their large comprehensive schools of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 students have wall-to-wall academies where every student participates in one of the career themes. So there's some really good examples of districts that are doing it very well and been doing it for years.
It seems like going with the academy route, it also is a way that maybe opens the door and helps create a greater pipeline, especially for minoritized students to find fields that are STEM related, or to find fields where we just aren't represented. There are so many different ways to do STEM that doesn't involve going to a four-year institution, right? And you honestly, some of them, you make a whole lot more money
Absolutely. Yes.
with that 2-year degree or that apprenticeship than not doing it. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
We have about 4 more minutes. I don't know if you want to chime in, Dr. Harris, or if anyone in our audience has questions. Oh, you don't have to, no pressure. I just want to make sure any questions that we may have that folks, I see Dr. Cheatham is wanting to chime in, so I'll step back.
Hello, everyone. I was just going to say, this speaks to my dissertation work and my 25 years of work, and, really getting into talking to parents and letting them know what these programs are, because it's sometimes hard to move administration to that way. And, sometimes parents don't understand the power that they have when, advocating for their children. And I will also say, you talked about this before, but that collaboration, and sometimes it's really stepping out of the box. I found things on the news and I was like, how would this impact my students? And contacted and, sent tweets and phone calls. And sometimes it was a hit, sometimes it wasn't. But, just trying to collaborate. And I worked in a working class area. So in the suburbs of Chicago, we didn't have so many access that people in the city had. And so trying to bring those resources to students and parents, it took a lot of work, and sometimes it took a lot of work outside of the school day. But, these career academies are so necessary. And I'm so glad that you brought this up. So that's all I had.
Thank you. And that's a good point. I mean, I think that a lot of the school administrators and teachers, they're thinking of career and technical education, these career academies, as what it was like when they went to school, which, career and technical education has a stigma because of the tracking issue. It was really preparing oftentimes minoritized students for low wage, low demand, low skilled occupational, contexts. But, that's not the mission of career and technical education anymore, not the mission of career academies anymore. They're not the old, what we call vocational education programs. And like I was saying, in some instances, it's the opposite. Like the students who have access to these, high demand, high skilled career pathways are, the white students, or the Asian or Indian students, and we don't have access, for Black students. So how do we get them in? So it's very complicated, but I think the stigma is still very powerful, and also the college for all mindset as well. Like everybody has to go get a 4-year, degree in order to make something of themselves. And I think those narratives and mindsets have to change.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. That's all I wanted to throw in there. Anytime I hear you speak or read your work, I think of all of the things that you've overcome in the work that you're doing on the research end, but also along with that, the things even within this program, for example, that had to be navigated for it to be implemented as it has been. And so for me, the myriad of takeaways, we could be here all day discussing. So if there were a question, it would be something around, what, if anything, surprised you in terms of a barrier or something you had to navigate or was particularly complex, whether logistically or otherwise, that you overcame. Again, many takeaways for researchers and practitioners alike. So I wanted to thank you for that. And, maybe offline, I'd love to hear about more, because I feel like there's a lot more to glean to continue this work and all of our work and what we're doing in the field and as researchers. So thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the barriers for me and my field is that stigma, that's still out there. There's a lot of people who are kind of what I call old school, and they don't want to hear anything about career and technical ed because that is seen as a lesser program, that's a tracking mechanism and things like that. And in terms of the research, at least this year has been really, the last couple of years have been really difficult for me in collecting data from schools because of the pandemic. There's so many issues that they're grappling with that they don't have time. So anybody that collects data with K-12 schools know it's not easy. So hopefully that will get better in terms of data collection approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. We appreciate you sharing your research with us today. We'll make sure I put in the chat that everybody can get access to your article. It is free, as well as the textbook that I spoke about earlier. And now we'll hand it back over to Dr. Camilla for the closing. So again, thank you, Dr. Fletcher, for this wonderful, informative presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you. We will be uploading the link to the wonderful webinar on our website. So be on the lookout for that. And I hope you all get a chance to rest this summer and recoup. And we'll see you for our next webinar, I believe Thursday.
Correct.